What's going on, everybody? My name is Slamurai. For those of you who don't know who I am or what I do, I upload multiple times a week on YouTube, and most of the stories I tell have sort of a dark or mysterious element to them. However, in an effort to restore your faith in humanity along the way, I'll also sprinkle a few positive endings in there through all the dark subjects we'll be talking about. That being said, in an effort to not waste any more of your time, we're going to go ahead and get into today's story. Let's begin. So I gotta tell you, the true story you're about to hear is most likely gonna leave you with more questions than answers, as is the case for many in Scottsdale, Arizona, back in August of 2020. You see, late one night at around 12:15 a.m., an officer had been making his rounds when all of a sudden, this extremely loud and strange scream began reverberating around the entire area he had been patrolling. And while it did sound like a cry for help, it didn't exactly sound human, so he called in backup, and as more and more of these officers began filling in, they determined those screams were coming from a water park that had already been closed for hours. So he called up the owner, he lets them in, and as they're walking back and forth inside this water park, it just seems like everywhere they go, that scream has already made its way to the opposite end of the park. And they would continue walking back and forth, trying to pinpoint this scream for the next hour, until they made a horrifying discovery. Those screams were coming from somebody who had been caught in a support structure for one of the water slides at that park. And I mean, this wasn't somewhere you could just walk right into. Whoever this was had to hop a fence into the park, climb up on top of the water slide, climb up further onto that support structure, and drop down from the very top all the way down to the bottom. In other words, they had to be extremely determined to make this happen. And the reason responders had such a difficult time pinpointing his location was because that column was essentially acting like a megaphone. The audio was only coming out of the very top, and they were getting calls from people stating those screams were coming from other areas over a quarter-mile away. And here's the thing, seeing as this person had gotten trapped in a support structure and now they wanted out, they couldn't just simply cut that person out. They had to call in a crane and strategically remove sections of that slide and the structure in order to work their way down to the bottom and extract it. In addition to this, it's going to take quite a while for a crane to arrive, and even when the crew does, they can't just rush into things and start dismantling it right and left in fear that they might ruin its structural integrity. And to put it quite bluntly, this would put everybody else trying to assist in this rescue at risk. Now, at some point, they would save quite a bit of time by building wooden supports underneath the remaining sections of that slide. This allowed them to solely work on the support itself and work their way down. But as for the man who was trapped inside, he was not only obviously injured from this fall, but he was running out of oxygen, in accordance with being in an extremely tight, confined space that was not allowing him to get a full breath, even if he had enough oxygen to be able to do so. Now, the crew they had called in was able to start disassembling by about 2:30 that morning, but at around 5 a.m., the man inside had stopped responding altogether, and it was at this point it had officially become a recovery operation. By the time they were able to finally reach him at 7 a.m., so well after 6 hours of being trapped inside of this thing, he had long since passed away. Well, that man was a 31-year-old by the name of Ryan Kelly, a transient, meaning he was only supposed to be working in Scottsdale for a short amount of time, and they never did quite figure out why he entered that column on that night. My friends and frenemies alike, we will see you on the next one.